Hey everyone, welcome back to the YOUnify podcast. If you're new here, I'm Brandyn Keating. I'm the co-founder and CEO of YOUnify, a nonprofit organization helping you flourish and thrive, and also the host of our podcast. I'm really excited to be joined today by Dr. JoAnn Flett. JoAnn is the executive director of the Center for Faithful Business at Seattle Pacific University. JoAnn was a 2020 Fulbright Teaching Scholar and 2024 Fulbright Specialist to Trinidad and Tobago. She currently serves on World Relief's board and co-founded the Entrepreneurship Hub, eHub, in Trinidad and Tobago. The eHub has served over 2,000 entrepreneurs with capacity building services. She is also a faculty advisor to the Oxford Character Project in Oxford, England, for an online course entitled Leading with Character. She served on numerous nonprofit boards, including the Accord Network, Ward Street Ministry, Geneva Global, Capital for Good. She's advised Everence Financial Philadelphia, the Ormond Center at Duke University Christian Enterprise Solutions to Poverty, and the Coalition for Christian Social Innovation at Belmont University. Her latest consulting project is with the Murdoch Trust, developing leadership capacity for 12 nonprofit executive directors. JoAnn, welcome. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Oh, Brandyn, thank you so much for having me and inviting me on the podcast. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. And of course, JoAnn is also a contributor to the book we talk about a lot here, Leadership for Flourishing. And JoAnn, you have such an interesting journey and interesting area of work that you focus on at the intersection of business, leadership, faith, and human flourishing. Can you share a little bit just about what experiences led you to that intersection?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I had started in undergrad in Bible and theology and then on to seminary. And somewhere in seminary kind of decided that I wanted to not so much be a supported missionary, but to sort of join God's work in the world. And so this idea of engaging business, which is the largest revenue generating sector in the globe, really felt right to me. God and God's self is relational, and human beings are relational, and business in the medium of all of the relationships. When you think of the stakeholder theory of business and all of the relationality that happens there, that wasn't by coincidence. And it was trying to kind of think through that relational God, relational people, and relational business that sort of landed me in this career trajectory of kind of answering that question.
Amazing. And we're definitely going to dive more into your fascinating work. I'd love just to hear a little bit more, though, about what young JoAnn was like. Like, how did you become you?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I wanted to be a missionary. So I was born in Trinidad and Tobago and just really wanted to be a missionary to a group on the west side of Africa. And so went to Bible college to be trained for that. And along the way, just really fell in love with business. Who can figure it out? Actually, fell in love with accounting and the work, and went and had a degree in accounting. So that's one of the undergraduate degrees I don't talk about. But ended up working as an accountant for a number of years, and in that process of doing accounting and being God, embodying God's presence in the workforce, so that most of the people who wouldn't ever go to church would interact and get to know you, really started to open up my eyes towards this idea of, wow, I just see business as such an important force. And so how do I get to be closer to that? How do I get to know that? And so some of the early influences were family members who had taken risks to take and go overseas and study and do really cool things. And so I'm like, I should probably do some of that. So the family influence on my life in terms of an aunt who had just sort of gone after her passion with education really played a big part of who I am and would become.
Beautiful. And so you lead the Center for Faithful Business at Seattle Pacific University. And I'm wondering if you could just unpack for folks a little bit, what does faithful business mean to you, especially in today's economic climate?
Yeah, it's really a sector that's ripe for discussion. The Center for Faithful Business, our work is across the academy, business, and the church. I call it the ABCs of the center. And what faithful business means really is about being aligned to a meta narrative of love and justice, and being faithful to that. In the Hebrew, the word faithful has the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the middle letter, and the last letter. And so it's this holistic, wholesome way of thinking and approaching business. And so our work in Faithful at the Center to promote faithful business really is saying, to provide resources for academics, for business practitioners, and for church leaders who really want to know what it means to embody the story of a Christian faith in the context of their work and life.
And can you say a little bit more about what those resources are? Like if somebody wanted to engage with or avail themselves of those resources that you provide, what would that look like?
Great question. We have 44 short documentary films that were made across 5 years, spanning almost 36 cities and 10 countries.
Wow.
And these documentary films are of people, it's been viewed over 1 million times, of people of faith who bring their faith to work and try to understand what it means to be in service to society. So our season 1 is business on purpose. Season 2 is serving employees. Season 3, serving customers. Season 4, serving the world. And season 5 was on faithful investing. And it's available at Faith & Co. And so I'll provide some links for that. So that's one element of the resources that we have. We also have the largest faith work collection that's housed in our library, and it's a downloadable PDF through our library resource. Wow. For people to grab those. It's not annotated, but it's a full-fledged, we were given this library and we've been adding to it for the past 5 years. Top-rated books that come out in and across faith and work integration. And so it's now well over 2,300 titles, and there's, again, a downloadable PDF. And then the third thing we do as a center is we bring academics here. So if you're an academic and you're listening to this podcast and you're really interested in thinking more about faith work integration in any discipline, we bring a group of academics here every summer for a week. We select 5 Pollard scholars. Bill Pollard was the CEO of ServiceMaster, a Fortune 500 company that's their number one goal was to honor God in the marketplace. And we've had the Pollard scholars now for about 8 years. And so we invite academics here. This summer we'll have 5 academics with us, sort of studying the archival material and some of the bigger themes of Pollard's life, including business as a moral community and the awesome responsibility of leadership. So those are the ways we resource other academics to do this work as well.
Beautiful. So we'll put all those links down in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, and also across our socials as well if you're finding this on one of our other social sites, so that folks can connect with all of those amazing resources. So in your chapter of the edited volume, Leadership for Flourishing, you argue that business can be a force for flourishing, not just for profit. And, a lot of people mean a lot of different things by flourishing. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about, what your definition of flourishing is in this context and how that might be a little bit different from more traditional ideas of success in business.
That's been life's work here. So I would say my definition of flourishing is delight in living a wholehearted life. I think of it from a theological lens. That I work with the concept of shalom, rightness of relationship with God, with self, with others, and with creation. it's full orbed, right? And that success isn't just success financially; it's success in all the dimensions of life. And so it really maps well to the work that Tyler Vanderweel and those folks have done with Flourishing. So
beautiful. Yeah, I love that sort of holistic view. And I think for many decades, many leaders, particularly here in the US and in our Western culture, have believed that social responsibility and profitability were sort of in tension. And I'm wondering if you feel like that's changing now and, just sort of what that evolution looks like. I feel like you're sort of helping to push that along in some really huge ways.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure it's fully changing. I think there are models that challenge it, and I think it was set up in the 1970s. We had, Milton Friedman, who talked about the only social responsibility of business is to increase profits, and unwittingly unleashed a vision of business that we should only ever think about profit as a sole factor of success. And in today's world, we basically know that there are so many other social ills, and business, of course, being the most predominant sector for revenue generation, right? If you looked at a group, whether it's government or nonprofits or businesses by far outpaces the revenue generation of government or the nonprofit sector.
Right.
And if business can't be oriented towards solving the social issues of our day, then I don't believe that anything government will do or anything that nonprofits will do to stand in that gap will close the gap. Yeah. And so there's the beautiful way of thinking about business. And I do think we've made some strides with the B Corp. Mm-hmm. In the UK, you have the community interest corporations in their social venture purpose corporations here in the US as well. So people are very much trying to get a different conversation started and very much challenging the dominant narrative of profit maximization and shareholder capitalism.
Yeah. And you do discuss businesses and business leaders that prioritize the flourishing of a broader ecosystem of stakeholders. What shifts when a company begins thinking that way?
Yeah, I think it's the first mindset shift has to be that we move away from a scarcity mindset that it's only about profitability and that's our only measure of success. So that's the first thing. You have to know that in caring well for your employees and caring well for your suppliers and caring well for your community all represent that ecosystem, and that general overall health allows you to stay in business and be in relationships. Again, back to that idea of the relationality of the business entity within the society. And as that begins to shift, as that mindset, that scarcity mindset shifts from we don't have enough, so we must maximize and take, as opposed to there's enough for everyone if we do everything in the ways in which it needs to be done. We don't need to necessarily carry out the utility principle of maximization in order for us to have a profit, be profitable, be successful, and other people can also have a living and a life as well.
Yeah, so really sort of moving from that scarcity-based extractive model to a more abundance-based regenerative model, it sounds like is the direction that you recommend. Yeah. And so are there culture changes that you observe that happen when a leader is able to make that shift, or decision-making changes?
Yeah, I think when a leader makes that shift, the next thing that happens is that they're beginning to struggle with the difficulty and the complexity of the system that is business. In order to really, I see the leaders as mostly leading that change, right? Leadership is about influence. Mm-hmm. And as they lead that change, there will be champions. In my research on the B Corp, it always surprised me the depth of the thinking of each of the leaders and the sacrifices that they made. So I interviewed 20 leaders. I had a grounded theory study on the B Corp. And I interviewed 20 leaders in the sector who were really outpacing everything in their industry.
Wow.
And by and large, they basically said, look, these were values that I had for myself, and then I hired for those values. And so the movement within their own organization almost felt natural. And the other piece to the research that I discovered was that year on year, they self-competed. They weren't competing necessarily for more profitability. They wanted to be profitable, but they were competing for higher B Corp scores. So to become a B Corp, you have to score 80 out of 200 metrics. And so if, let's say, the first year you scored 81, everyone was bought in to score 85 or 90 to get better at using business as a force for good. And there for a while, B Corp actually had a movement which was, even if you weren't becoming certified or you weren't having the legal designation of the benefit corporation, you could be like a B Corp by just having the assessment and knowing what to pay attention to out of those 200 metrics. And so really, the folks at Unilever, so I interviewed Ben and Jerry's for one of the companies in my research, and they said very quickly, we understood very, very quickly when Unilever acquired Ben and Jerry's as a customer-facing brand, the fact that it was a B Corp and it was certified and it had paid attention to all of the metrics of serving the stakeholder demographic, it became an acquisition strategy for them, so that they went out and they then started acquiring. If you were a B Corp in a customer-facing brand, that became their acquisition strategy. And I just thought that was amazing because they recognized that those companies were actually winning in the marketplace.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, so B Corp stands for Benefit Corporation, and they have these 200 metrics that they're judged upon for, are they benefiting the broader society? Can you say more about what the metrics are sort of like that are defining what is and is not a benefit corporation?
So the B Corp is the certified. So you're certified under these 200 metrics to become a B Corp, and they're available in all 50 states. The legal designation is a benefit corporation. This is all run by B Lab, and there's a particular founder within the B Corp movement who named all these things B. So again, the B Corp is the certification that you get out of the 200, and they're independently certified. So they're third party independent certification. And then the legal designation that you can make as an entity to say, I'm going to name a public benefit, i.e., I'm Target, and I'm going to name education as my public benefit, so that profitability, when you're profitable, you can actually give to education endeavors beyond just the 5% or whatever that's designated. That then sets you in there. The B Corps are measured, the 200 metrics come from customer facing. So how are you looking at customers? How are you thinking about employees? How are you thinking about suppliers? How are you thinking about the community? How are you thinking about environment? And so you're measured across the stakeholder theory elements, and those are under revision about every 3 years. And so I think they're on their seventh iteration of those 200 metrics, and they're very rigorous.
Yeah,
very rigorous.
Wow. And so what do you think that traditional business leaders can learn from those who are part of this B Corp movement? Are there specific takeaways that you would want a business leader who is just kind of learning about this different way of thinking about leadership to take on or to start with?
Yeah, I would recommend that, this idea that business only is about profit maximization. I think the B Corps affirm that they're for-profit entities, and you have to make a profit to be successful in business at a minimum. But that's not the only measure of success. That you measure success by the depth of the relationships that you build with your customers, with your employees, with your suppliers, with the local community that you're involved with, how you care for the environment. And by putting all of those demands, if you will, on the business, I see this, and the B Corp leaders, and so every business leader is invited to take this view, that this is actually a higher, more evolved form of capitalism. That it is capitalism as it was meant to be, that you are not sacrificing profits.
Right.
This is not a socialist ideal. You're in the marketplace to win in the marketplace, but winning in the marketplace is not just measured by financial means. It's measured by all of the other social elements that we externalize to society. I used to joke when I taught accounting with my students, don't leave the class and do this accounting equation this way. We have a total cost equation in accounting that says total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. But there's a whole social cost in accounting that's not internalized into our financial statements. That's externalized to the work and so often the work of the B Corp and social venture groups is to bring that social cost back, or at least to remind business that you have an obligation to be an upstanding member, to serve society, to make acceptable profit, but but please, you don't need to maximize profit.
Yeah.
So hopefully business leaders can take that as a lesson.
Yeah. And well, part of what I hear you saying is you don't need to create social harm in order to maximize profit, that we can have this more holistic view about what it means to be profitable as a business and be socially conscious or create positive impacts in the world around us, to the customers and suppliers, et cetera, and the community at large, that these two things, profitability and positive impact, can live in harmony. So for a business leader who's listening today, are there some practical first steps that you would recommend for them if they wanted to start their journey on building a flourishing organization?
Yeah, there are some resources at the Benefit Corporation, so bcorporation.net. You go online and start to become aware of this group of companies. I would say, how do you measure success beyond profit? So, but certainly you want to be profitable, and that's easy. You have your P&L and you have your balance sheet and your cash flow statements. Those are all valid things, but profit is like oxygen to the human person. We don't wake up and think, I'm going to breathe today, but yet we need it to live. And so businesses need profit to be successful. But life is more than breathing. It is about relational things. And so to put that mindset into leadership, and then ask yourself, well, how would I measure success among my employees? How might I measure success among my customers? How might I measure success being a successful business in my local community? How would I measure, am I successful as a business in my care for the environment? And beginning to ask those questions. We're in an age of AI that is inviting us to ask deeper questions about our human condition. And if you ask me, it places relationality right at the center of it all. And so having business leaders start to move in that direction and ask some of those questions, I trust them to actually have good questions like that and arrive at great answers because they're answering it themselves.
Beautiful. And so our time has absolutely flown by. I have one more question for you, which is that we seem to be having a moment where a lot of people, certainly here in the US and I think in other countries as well, are becoming very conscious of concentration of wealth among a few billionaires, and have a moment where they're kind of feeling that's not okay. And so on the flip side of that coin, I'm wondering what is giving you hope right now when you look at the future of business and leadership, thinking about all we've talked about with creating business that's more flourishing and that cultivates flourishing in the community around it.
That's great. Such a great question. What is hope in today's world in business? Look, I teach at the undergrad level, and one of the courses I was just teaching is Finding Purpose. And in it was a mashup of undergrads across different disciplines. So business, management, accounting, finance. And almost to a one, when you ask them to describe purpose or the purpose of business, they answered that it was to be service to society.
Wow.
To which, and they didn't do this in class in like an open, like, tell me what you're thinking. I had them privately reflect on it and write what they thought the purpose of business was. And it was super surprising. Even I was surprised that the way they answered it. And so initially they had undertaken their major with this idea that, gee, I'm going to become an accountant and get a job. I'm going to go into finance or marketing, management. And the job was there, but the desire to serve in the context of the job was even more palpable and prominent. And I felt really encouraged by that.
Yeah, I feel encouraged. Well, thank you for sharing that. That gives me hope. I hope it gives everybody watching hope. If you feel like you've gotten something out of today's podcast, please do hit the like button. We'd love to hear your comments. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll see when the next one is dropping. And interacting in that way also helps this information get to more people. So it's a really quick way to help right now. We'll have all the links below in the description for you to connect with JoAnn and her amazing resources and the resources of her center. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much for joining us, JoAnn. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And do you have a busy day for the rest of your day?